show, we're joined by the creative force behind the sci-fi cult classic Toxic Avenger, 1984, Brooklyn Friends School graduate Joe Ritter. Joe Ritter, someone who has a common history with me because I too went to Brooklyn Friends School, and that's how I know Joe. But also, Joe Ritter, obviously from the film industry, used to work with Jack and used to work with Jack's legendary and genius camera operator brother, Ted Churchill. He was Ted's assistant for many years. He'll be joining us in 30 minutes from now. Between then and now, Jack and I are going to, we're going to talk about a little news. How are you, Jack? How was your night, buddy?
It's been 2 days since we were on the air last time, right?
That's true. That's true. Where did you eat last night? Is Maggie cooking again? Or are you going out still?
No, she is cooking. She is cooking right along. She went out on the ice last night in the middle of the night with a friend, Elfie.
Oh, on Lily Pond?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she likes doing that.
And how much ice is on Lily Pond right now?
Well, there is a little bit of open water around the northern edges where we live. But everything else goes from maybe 1 to 5 inches. But there are people out there playing hockey, and so it's pretty safe.
Well, she picked a good day to do it because now there's snow on the ice on Lily Pond, and it's a little bit heavier to navigate now, huh?
Did you see in New York, the big headline was warning yesterday of 3 inches of snow?
Well,
when did the world change, Seth? When did 3 inches of snow become an issue? Newsworthy.
I'll tell you exactly when. This is a climate change thing. People are not used to 3 inches of snow.
I don't think it is. I think
this snow that we got is like, here we got 3 inches of snow, and it's like, it's a joke.
It is. It's an absolute joke, but it's not a climate change thing. I think because we never get much more than that, this becomes a worthy news item.
Slow news day.
Well,
hey, Trump is out of office, buddy. We got to find entertaining news where we can find entertaining news.
I tell you, we're scraping the bottom because I have to tell you, I'm having huge postpartum problems here, Seth.
You gave birth to a Biden baby.
It's just that having intelligent people in the government seems so bizarre.
Competent.
Yes, competent. After 4 years, there's no news because you say, well, of course he's going to hire this guy because he has all this experience and knowledge and intelligence. And then it ceases to become a news item because you say to yourself, he's going to take care of it for us.
Yeah. I mean, we might as well have called this show No Fuck You.
Yes.
Right. And since there's no president going on the air every morning to say, fuck you. And then Jack and Seth say, no, fuck you.
Yep.
That's what we could have called the show.
So what do you think of this Miami office of the former president with the eagle seal on it that he's organized here?
I think it is yet another act of desperation. That is it just, I don't know.
Seth, it's like a plate that I saw that says ex-assistant Lincolnville fire chief. It reminds me of that.
Talk about a desperate grasp at self-aggrandizement. Then, the whole idea that the things that we value, the traditions that we have, that we recognize, the things that we as Americans like to hold on to, those things are rapidly becoming not really work. I mean, people got upset with me when I took issue with Bernie Sanders' attire that we went over on the show. But I'm like, do we have any traditions anymore? You know, these traditions are meant to value our process, you know? Anyway,
Well,
that's
unfortunately, traditions have become the iconology of the right, which demands that the left reject them.
yeah, I suppose that's true.
The flag is a great example of that.
Right.
Right-wing iconology. It used to
Right.
be you were a patriot. Now it's you see that flag and you expect to see a Trump sign next to it.
It's funny because, you know, I fly my American flag in the front of the house, and, you know, and it confuses the Trumpers. You know, you fly an American flag under a Black Lives Matter sign, all of a sudden you've got mixed messages. No, actually, that's America. These people, they value the difference between our regional worldviews. And with Joe, we're going to talk about Quaker and you know what the Quaker worldview is in terms of how they contributed to America versus people that value liberty and their own personal liberty that they think is America. This flag that I wave represents my ability to subjugate Black people and do whatever the fuck I want to do. And that's why I'm an American. Isn't that great? Well, no, that's not why you're an American. That's not what being an American is all about. But interesting in the news this morning, talking about things that appear one way and are not another way. We have a couple of things we got to talk about before Joe gets here and then pick up afterwards. Exclusive reporting from Reuters this morning. Proud Boys leader was prolific informer for law enforcement since 2012. Enrique Tarrio has been the leader of the Proud Boys extremist group, a group that Canada has listed as a terrorist organization.
I love that. I love Canada.
When is that? When are we going to do that, by the way?
You want to see a terrorist organization? Look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto Maple Leafs.
That's a terrorist organization. We got to get Natty B on to talk about that. You know, how the Maple Leafs are a terrorist organization.
I would love to have Natty B on. I want him to talk about his chainsaws. I did a Photoshop thing for him with he and I standing there, and he had a 3-inch blade on his. I Photoshopped a 3-inch blade. It was called the Trump Mini model. Okay. At this tiny little stubby little blade, it probably had 12 links on it and all.
You're implying that Donald Trump has a small penis.
What do you think?
I think that's what you're implying.
You know how what's her name described it?
A little mushroom?
No, she said it looks like a penis, but it's much, much smaller. I mean, what the fuck, Seth?
I don't know. Is there anybody, you know, I guess if you were hung like that, you'd maybe try to not show it to that many people, you know?
I think hung is the wrong word. It reminds me of the picture of Chris Christie in the baseball outfit.
Are we starting to find out a theme here?
I think we are. And also I want to mention, did you see that thing that said that Trump was recruited by the Russians 40 years ago?
Reading my mind, buddy. And now, you know, we talk about reporting in Reuters, which is, you know, the kind of thing you want to report on. And you got to be really careful when you post anything from the Daily Mail. But this is a book review. It's a book. Here's the Daily Mail headline, you know, explosive new book claims KGB began grooming young and vain, and that's in quotes, Donald Trump 40 years ago by saving him from financial ruin and turned him into a Russian asset who gave Putin, quote, everything he wanted. American Compromat, how the KGB cultivated Donald Trump and related tales of sex, greed, power, and treachery by Craig Unger, Unger. That book out yesterday. In this book, Unger claims Trump's association with Russia began in 1976 when he decided to make his move from developing real estate in Queens to Manhattan. What do you know? It's another bridge and tunnel story of crushed dreams. It says Trump was rescued multiple times from multiple bankruptcy by boatloads of Russian cash laundered through his real estate in the 1980s and 1990s. It goes on to say that Trump became useful to them through Jeffrey Epstein and was introduced to them by Jeffrey Epstein, who supplied the Russians in New York and elsewhere with young girls. Okay, it does go on. This is something that the CIA is aware about. It's something that the FBI is aware of. And my question to you this morning has to do with the timeline of revelation and what this means for Trumpism and the GOP political dynamic as we move forward. Are you frozen?
Nope.
Okay.
Sorry. No, you're absolutely right. I just aside from the political thing, can you imagine if we could have him executed for treason, which is really what should happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that would be priceless.
I mean, in any fully formed culture where you're not dealing with a fundamentalist political party, which is what the GOP has become, this is what would happen. We had 5 Republican senators say that they were supportive of impeachment moving forward in the Senate. We had 45 Republican cowards in the Senate yesterday refuse to move forward with an impeachment that merely 21 days ago, 3 weeks to the day, those people were cowering in an office with the vice president who Trump sent them to hang.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, the fact that they say you can't impeach him until he's no longer president, and then now you can't impeach him now that he's no longer president.
Jack, let me ask you a question. Do you know how many Arizona Republicans have left the Arizona GOP since that event?
I don't.
9,900 and change people who are registered Republicans in Arizona are no longer registered Republicans in Arizona. Those are the people that were so pissed off within the GOP, they changed parties. Those are not the number of Republicans in Arizona who won't vote for a Republican, a Trump Republican. There's probably 5 times as many of those. You know, we talk about politics as it's really a barometer for our worldview. It's not really politics we're talking about.
No, it never is. It can't be. Politics is a symptom. Yeah. It's like whether you're a Jets fan or a Patriots fan. That's all it is. But underlying that fandom are all sorts of psychological problems.
Well, this is why you are a 3-time award winner of the Man of the Year award issued by the American Amateur Psychologists Association, the AAPA, 3-time Man of the Year for that organization. Mentioned glowingly in the Journal of the American Amateur Psychologists Association. This is a great compliment. And this is why people find value in this show.
You know, my father was a freelance journalist, and for years he wrote the scripts for Dr. Joyce Brothers. So they would send him, the network, whoever it was, would send him these stacks of letters from viewers, and he would take them and read them, and he would coagulate them into some kind of a popular narrative into one problem. He would write the letter that reflected a lot of these letters, and she would read them on the air as letters. He had no background in psychology or psychiatry, but he was a very good writer, and that's what he did for years. And both of my parents used amateur psychology to try to control my brother and I, who were out of control, needless to say. So it would always be, oh, the twins are just going through a stage, you know?
Amazing.
And so it's not surprising that I gravitate toward this.
Well, and then, there's the ultimate sensitivity, emotional sensitivity in the American political spectrum on the extreme left. Are you ready for this? Washington and Lincoln are out. Now, this is in the San Francisco Chronicle, so it's not exactly, a bastion of right-wing media. San Francisco School Board tosses out 44. Okay, you have to subscribe. 44 high school names. And apparently George Washington and Abraham Lincoln are out because I think they were slaveholders.
That's absurd.
It's 44
it's absurd.
In controversial move. The names of the presidents, conquistadors, authors, and even current U.S. senator will be removed from 44 San Francisco school sites after the city school board Tuesday deemed the iconic figures unworthy of the honor.
That is such bullshit.
One vote.
Rewriting history. History is there to analyze its successes and mistakes. And if you're going to rewrite it without anything that points to these successes and mistakes, it's called How Far Have We Come? Okay.
How far have we fallen?
Well, it can go in either direction. It doesn't matter, but it is history. It just goes to show you there are people on the left that are as nuts as the assholes on the right. Isn't sorry.
That incredible?
Oh.
What are you thinking?
Oh.
What are you thinking? How is this possible? Isn't that an outrage? I got to tell you.
History. It just goes to.
I'm stunned, dude.
It is, Seth. That was really depressing. Now, there are news items that I miss. You know what I want to know? When I go on the Daily Mail, I see names I've never heard of before. They're presented in headlines like I should know who the fuck they are. It's either a rapper who was just shot. I couldn't give a shit if a rapper was shot. And who is this guy? And you have to tell me, because I truly don't know. Who is Armie Hammer?
Armie Hammer is a tall, handsome movie star. He starred in the remake of the Cold War era Spy versus Spy property. Armie Hammer. Armie Hammer is apparently a guy with a lot of kinks.
It seems so. And to me, it's like throwing out a serial killer you've never heard of, because if you don't know his background as an actor, it just looks like they're following a random serial killer.
I mean, honestly, Armie Hammer's career is going to be a lot less interesting than the documentary about Armie Hammer. Like, by the way, the film that we're talking about is The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the remake of the remake of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. That I happen to own. Maybe I should have him autograph it.
You own it? You bought it?
No, the kids bought it.
The dog, the dog ate the homework.
No, I've seen it once or twice with the kids. The kids love it because it's like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It's a fun romp through post-war Europe. He was in Hotel Mumbai. He was in Final Report, Call Me by Your Name, Nocturnal Animals, The Birth of a Nation, Entourage. He played himself. He's been around for a while.
He couldn't be any good if I haven't heard about him. I mean, he really couldn't. You're not
No,
talking Tom Hardy here. You know what
no,
I mean? No,
no,
no.
no. We're not talking Tom Hardy, but we're talking. We're talking about a guy that now apparently there's some kooky stuff going on inside Army Hammer's head there, Jack.
Yeah, it seems so.
There's a couple of kinks. I mean, he's got some. Seems like he's got a little violence going on, a little psychosexual action there. That's a little kooky.
Yes, I agree. So, Seth, I just finished this book, Hell in the Heartland by Jax Miller. It's a woman reporter about that trailer that caught on fire and the two girls that disappeared in 1999 in northeastern Oklahoma. Fascinating story. Wonderful book. And so I've started researching stuff on YouTube about it because they made various shows about it and stuff like that. It is absolutely fascinating. It took them 20 years to solve the disappearance and the murder, the disappearance of these two girls and the parents of one of them. And it's taken them 20 years to solve it.
What was the ultimate? Let me just guess. One scumbag that was like a meth factory guy killed them because they found out about his operation, or their brother was involved, or the father was involved. What is it, Jack? What sordid details did these poor girls meet their end in?
You just nailed it.
Oh, really?
I think it was a meth debt. The meth apparently in this area where the Kansas and Missouri and all these states meet is unbelievable. It's ravaging, and it turns towns into the Walking Dead. This is the feeling I get from the description, but it looks like that's what it was. But 20 years, Seth, and they still haven't found the bodies.
All right. So here's a region of the country. It might as well be the Chad of the United States. Landlocked, uninteresting, plains, temperatures are shitty. People that move there are poorly educated. The people that live there are poorly educated. Not a lot going on, and an American manufacturing base that has left them, to their own devices, abandoned.
Even worse, Seth. Even worse.
Yeah.
Zinc and zinc mining and tin mining in the 30s and 40s during the Second World War and the First World War. This area supplied almost all of those metals to the war industry. And then they were abandoned, and there are hundreds of caved-in old mines that fill up with toxic shit, and that if you go swimming, your hair turns red. This has been going on for a couple of generations there. So all of a sudden they have this cellar of toxicity where they're trying to bring up children, very classically religious, very patriotic, and their children are all absolutely fucked up. And then the meth thing happens. I mean, you're talking about a place that God forgot, Seth.
Yeah. And then, we all think about, you and I have talked a couple of times about how that part of the country, they have 2 senators in Oklahoma, by the way.
Yes, that's a tragedy.
That these people vote for, okay? And if that doesn't represent the decline of our democracy, I don't know what does. But then we've talked about, the urbanization of America and how people are, how people prior to COVID were, the divide between an urban lifestyle and an urban culture and this northeastern Oklahoma culture. They might as well be from Jupiter and Mars, the people that occupy this place. Interesting article today in Yahoo News. The end of offices. New York's business districts face uncertain future. What happens to these? What happens to New York is the big question, right? Place where you and I used to live. And by the way, I was talking with Jessica the other night. And I said, Jess, you hit the lottery. You have a chance to live wherever in the world that you want to live. Where would you choose? Where would you call home? She says, I would totally live in the West Village happily for the rest of my life.
But keep in mind, Seth, having lived there for 20 years in the West Village, this place is it's probably like areas of Brooklyn, Parks, wherever.
Yeah.
It is such a bubble within a bubble. It's like Camden, Maine in New York City.
So,
Look what it's got. It's right on the river. Okay, there are no projects west of you that people walk through. As a matter of fact, the only close thing to a project is probably up on 17th Street, okay, in 8th Avenue, which isn't even a project by project standards. You have none of that traffic. The nearest subway is 6th Avenue. Okay, so you have no subway stops in the West Village. Only until 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't build over 6 stories. And then people started buying air rights and stuff like that. That's why it's slowly changing. And you have the High Line. You have the meat market that's turned into Chelsea Market. And in other words, this is the absolutely now most expensive area of Manhattan, including Central Park West.
yeah.
So it's not really Manhattan, Seth. It's like living in Brooklyn.
I can see that. But I guess, my question for the audience would be, what happens when these spaces are repurposed?
They won't be. They won't be in the West Village. You're talking about
Midtown. Let's say you own a Churchill Properties LLC owns a 45-story office building on Park Avenue South and 39th Street.
Right. Well, see, that
takes up the whole block.
The reason that I say that is because I have a feeling, and work with me here, Seth, because I'm just throwing this out.
That's what it's for.
Midtown Manhattan will be a place with a very limited amount of office space, but just dedicated to office space. Yeah. Whereas all of a sudden around Midtown, the West Village, the East Village, north of the park, will become a suburban living unit area. You see what I'm saying? I'm saying that.
I do.
Yeah. I mean,
how do you envision those, with the advent of the internet and people working from wherever they can work from, how do you envision those office buildings being repurposed for other kinds of use? What happens to, this post-industrial revolution American model of office buildings in Midtown Manhattan? What happens to those spaces? What happens to Patrick's Billionaires Boys Clubs? Do they what are those spaces? Are they indoor playgrounds? Are they what are they? What happens to them?
I think you nailed it. I think they're going to be redesigned as something that looks more like a Scandinavian socialist dream. So all of a sudden, particularly if you start getting into multi-levels, which is going to happen sooner or later, you're going to see much more building/park space. Okay, imagine it growing up, because it can't grow out. But I think it may condense into it's almost like Central Park with buildings.
Yeah. I mean, in the future, in a water scarce world, are they turned into indoor farms?
Sure.
Are they turned into community living spaces? Is Midtown Manhattan the next? Oh, okay. Joe is trying to log on,
Okay.
and he says, "I tried, but it said that let me see what I can do." Okay, how about laptop? He's trying to log on his phone or something like that, or maybe there's another browser that he can use on his phone. We're going to see Joe Ritter log on here in a couple of seconds as soon as we get this technological stuff straightened out.
He has the link set that you gave him, right?
He does, yeah. He just tried to click it, and it says, "Oh no, we don't support this browser yet. Please copy the link and paste it directly into Safari browser."
Tell him to stop using Netscape 1.2. So, Seth, I want to say to all our fans out there, I always thought the COVID shot would be something my doctor would call me about. That's in fact not the case. So what you have to do is you have to go and you have to call a number, and I'm going to give it to you for those who are a little slow like I am. Okay,
Yeah.
so get ready to copy this number down. The number is 877-780-7546. Do you want to put that up, Seth? Can you for me?
Yep, hold on a sec. I'm communicating with Joe. He's going to use his MacBook.
That's great information.
Which is what he was going to use in the first place. Which is
okay. Can you put that up, Seth, so people have it?
I don't have anything here, bud.
Oh, that's because I didn't put my page up. Sorry. Right. Keep in mind when you call, there's an automated system that puts you on a list. And in fact, it works really well. And I wish Spectrum and these other companies would use the same software because this really works. Can you get it, Seth?
It's up there now.
No, I can't see it here.
You can't see it because I stopped your video.
Then can you start? No, it's on my other screen.
No, it's up. It's up right now, bud.
No, it's not.
Hold on, bud.
1-877-780-7545. It takes 5 minutes. It works great. They will ask you a few questions about your birth date and your age and whether you work in the healthcare system. And this is probably the best way to sign up. 877-780-7545.
That is a really good and helpful thing. Somebody says, is it region specific?
You know, being from Maine, I have no idea what in the world is region specific and what isn't.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately, it's the way we are here.
Yes, it is. So we're still waiting for Joe to get his technology worked out. He'll be joining us shortly, I assume. All right, we're gonna hide that. Get you back, Jack.
Okay.
All right. Hide that and go back to that screen. And so and while I'm waiting for Joe to get back on, are there any other news items of interest to you that you're interested in pursuing?
Let me take a quick look. I didn't do. I'm so proud of Dr. Fauci. Did you see him on Rachel? He is such a rock star.
Yeah,
he is.
It's like a ridiculous kind of, it's a laughable experience for the country that we had leaders that were so inept and so paralyzed by fear of the emotional dysfunction of leadership that they simply didn't order the vaccine. They ordered 400,000 doses for the entire country. They needed 600,000 doses for the entire country, and they just simply were inept. And so, we have this Senate that's involved in trying to figure out how to operate uh, just basically take care of the business of the nation, with these Republicans that are in there that are like incapable of addressing any of the problems that we have in this country from a governance standpoint or from a political standpoint. It is ridiculous.
You know,
And
it's interesting to hear the Biden administration said, if it would be one thing if we had to rework a plan for COVID vaccine distribution. We didn't. There was no plan.
and
Can,
and
can
there
you,
was I mean, there's no effort even at contact tracing on the federal level.
Yep.
All right, we're having a problem with Joe here. Safari can't find the server. I'm going to send him the guest link one more time. Let's make sure he's using the right guest link. So while I'm trying to talk to you, Jack, I'm in the process of navigating this as well.
I want to also ask a question to our guests. I was trying to find it for Seth this morning. There's a film I just watched on Netflix that's about an ex-boxer in Ireland, and he gets involved with a very badass family. And I really liked it because I like these kind of low-budget films, and I cannot find it. It's got a weird title. Has anybody seen it? Could they put the title up for me? Because I wanted Seth to watch it. It's one of those real dishpan realism Irish stories that just so depressing. You just feel better about your life. But it's really quite well done. Do we have any suggestions what the name of it is?
An Irish boxing film.
It involves one of the characters is an Irish ex-boxer, and he's involved with a local tough sort of mob family, sort of unwittingly because he's not that bright. And it's a wonderful film, and I cannot now find the title of it. It's a small film, a low-budget film.
Yeah.
And if somebody can just clue me in on this, I'd really be appreciative.
Right.
Because I want you to see it, Seth. I love these kind of low budget, very intimate portraits, particularly from the British Isles, whether it's Scotland or Wales or Ireland. I just love these kind of films.
So interestingly, Emma is also watching something in this genre of film. She's watching a Northern Irish and unintelligible. I don't even know that these people speak the same language as we do.
They should be born with subtitles, Seth. There's no question.
We have to watch it with subtitles.
Yeah.
It's a Northern Irish comedy series, contemporary, set in the post-Chernobyl world, right? And there are these Ukrainian exchange students that come to Northern Ireland. Oh. They're all high school age, right? And
set in the 1980s.
And it's set in the post-Chernobyl 1980s, right? And they come to, thank you, Jessica. And they come to Northern Ireland, and they're in Belfast, and the kids get involved with the high school kids. The difference between the Ukrainian kids and the Irish kids is hysterical.
Okay, and what's the name of it, Seth?
I'm having Jessica get it for me now.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Hey, Jess, what's the name of it? Look at your phone. Oh, okay. I'll look at my phone. It's called Derry Girls.
Ooh, is it on Netflix?
Yeah, and the Ukrainian girl was there for one episode, I'm finding out. So it's called Derry Girls, and it's hysterical viewing. Another wonderful kind of cute little anti-Trump comeuppance from this week. Yesterday is the day that the Baseball Hall of Fame nominates the players to the Hall of Fame. Do you know the name Curt Schilling?
Yes.
Curt Schilling, extreme right-wing reactionary scumbag who is a Trump apologist, straight down the line Trumper, reprehensible comments in the public space about politics. He has, by all rights, statistically, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Even the Baseball Writers of America refused to put him in the Hall of Fame because of his statements outside of baseball. So Barry Bonds, the steroids addict, Roger Clemens, the steroids addict, and Curt Schilling, the anger addict, all three were refused entry to the Hall of Fame yesterday because of steroids, and Trumpism. So Trumpism, we're sitting here waiting for Joe Ritter to join us, the guy who was the creative force behind the Toxic Avenger, who is having apparently some technical difficulties on his end. We share a link that people can join the show on, and you paste the link into your browser. But people don't like to hear us talk about the technical challenges of Be Live. Sometimes it's just a misery to do this show.
Okay, Seth.
To do anything.
I found the name.
What is it?
It's called Calm with Horses.
CALM?
Yep. So if you get a chance, I just love these things. I see them as anthropological, sociological analyses of humanity. To me, it's like watching Cops or Patty Mayo. And and of course you see actors you've never seen before in your life and may not ever see again. And they are so real. People are just so real. I guess that's from looking at Hollywood films for decades and where everything is synthetic. These people are just so real. And your ability to, because of that, you have a much greater ability to empathize with them. And all of the main actors in this film are really riveting.
Yeah. And so here it is, Jack.
Yep. So there you see in that picture, you see in the upper left is the son of this family, the Fears there. And then in the lower right is his mate, who is this ex-boxer that does the sort of dirty work for him.
Well, actually, I do know Barry Keoghan.
Really?
As an actor, yeah.
No kidding.
Sure. Yeah. And he has been in Barry Keoghan has been in oh boy. Barry Keoghan, you know him too. He's really getting known for Calm with Horses, but Barry Keoghan also starred in.
Now, is he the boxer or the other guy?
The other guy.
The other guy is unbelievable looking guy.
God, where do we know this guy from?
Yeah, see if you can find it.
Oh. Is that Joe Ritter? All right, I'm going to get Joe Ritter on right now.
Okay.
We're going to get Joe Ritter on.
Calm with Horses, folks.
All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by there he is.
Finally, Joe.
You guys, how are you?
How are you, man?
How are you, Joe?
It's amazing. And I look at you two. We all have a pulse. This is incredible.
It is.
I barely have a pulse. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Ritter. Joe Ritter, a in chronological order, a Brooklyn Friends School alum. Joe, you graduated from BFS, didn't you?
Why, yes, I did.
And how many years did you attend Brooklyn Friends School?
I went for 12 long years.
You did.
It was 13 because I was a lifer, and so was my sister, kindergarten through 12.
As was I. I was
Excellent. Oh my God. And you were in the old
I was
building too?
on Schermerhorn Street in the shadow of the Brooklyn House of Detention.
And now, Jack, has he told you any about this hilarious school that we went to?
He has referenced it many times, Joe, probably to demonstrate the depth of his general knowledge of the world.
Well, yes. One of the great things about Brooklyn Friends School in the old building, which was built in 1867 and had this ancient meeting house that we used to go to every morning to have our morning meeting, at a Quaker school. It's very important to relax for a few minutes before the torture begins. However, it was just a great place. And they really let us roam free. Basically, it was at that time, I guess, in the 60s when this progressive education idea was growing. But I guess the Quakers had their own idea for quite a while. But where else could you in kindergarten learn what a conjugal visit was?
Wow.
That's true. You want to tell the story of how you learned in kindergarten of what a conjugal visit is? Or we just want to leave that out there.
My playground was behind the Brooklyn House of Detention. So the school was behind the Brooklyn House of Detention. And this is a skyscraper of a prison. So in the street behind our school, as we would go home or arrive at school, there's a line of people lined up down the block. And those are the wives of the guys inside or the girlfriends. Hey, Mommy, why are they lining up over there or whatever? And they go, oh, that's a conjugal visit, Joe. Very nice.
I like that.
I know that.
Yeah.
But
I was
helped
too young at the time. I was too young because I only was in Zippy Kossoff's primary A class.
Well, even more entertaining about our neighborhood that we grew up in, Jack, because you didn't grow up in our neighborhood. You had your own special place to grow up in. But Brooklyn Heights is one of the whorehouse capitals of the world. And you would have loved it because when I was walking to school as a little 5, 6, 7-year-old boy, I was walking past women hanging out the window, on their pillow, and they were watching the kids go to school. Or you'd leave school and there was same thing going on, taking a break, having their cigarette in the window. And yes, those were the ladies of the day, I called them.
Wow, that's amazing.
And there was at least 40 of them on all these storied streets of Brooklyn Heights, Joralemon Street, Garden Place. Really where famous movie stars lived and whatever eventually. But still, there was this thing about our neighborhood that was, it wasn't like shootouts in the street. That was down the block.
Yeah.
So, Joe, let me ask you a question. So you said to your parents when you were 3, they said, Joe, what do you want for Christmas? And you said, Mommy, I want a conjugal visit.
No, probably by 6 years old.
You're going to put your eye out with that.
I had to figure the whole thing out. 3 was a little early, but by 6, I was ready.
Joe, did you see, Joe, that I'm wearing a shout out to your neighborhood
You
today?
noticed that, yes.
See, it's
and have you been lucky enough, Jack, to go to Sahadi's ever?
I haven't, but then again, there's so many wonderful places. If I were to walk there on the way, you just get sidetracked.
Well, you ended up in our neighborhood shooting a million commercials. I can only imagine.
Yeah, I didn't. Ted did, but we shot all our commercials in Westchester because that's where the nice houses are.
Oh, well.
I remember Ted came back from a shoot at 10 in the morning one day, and it was so fucking cold, he said the Nagra didn't work.
Oh, no.
You know how cold that's got to be?
Yeah.
Pretty cold.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Isn't the Nagra lubricated with the finest possible oil?
Well, actually, in those old days when it was that cold, you could actually hear the camera. You go,
Yeah, exactly.
I went into the dark room. It was 20 below in Chicago. No, it was in Boston. And I touched the film can and I lifted it and it stuck. And I was just like, I ripped it off instantly because it was like, occupational hazard of being an assistant cameraman loading during the cold. The cans were steel. So
let's talk about
enough of that.
I wanted to ask you, Joe, that the Toxic Avenger is like this iconic early acknowledgement in the entertainment space of at least an awareness of the toxicity of the things that we produce as humans and how that affects our environment. And toxicity as a metaphor. I was interested in, not that there's a real connection here, but don't you think that's a valid thing to revisit now? And we've had 40 years to think about the implications of toxicity in our environment, and certainly if the GOP doesn't represent toxicity in our environment, I don't know what does. But what are your thoughts on some of the themes that may be employed in a new Toxic Avenger? And what do you give us a general sense of what's happening with the project? Is it inked? Do we have a production schedule? Where are we in the process of the Toxic Avenger? And what will it be called? I mean, we have several in the series, right?
Yeah. I'm just to the knowledge that it will be called the Toxic Avenger. I think as far as what the new story is concerned, Lloyd has recently come out and said, Lloyd and I are not really involved in the movie. Lloyd is more than me because he owned it. Nevertheless, this is a whole new group of people working on it. And let's go back to the beginning. It was an unbelievably prophetic idea that happened because of two reasons. I worked on a 2020 with Alicia Weber, who is a famous camera woman of the time, did documentary work for 2020, NBC Weekend, CBS Reports. I did all of those with Hugh Downs and Geraldo Rivera, et cetera, et cetera. Nevertheless, we did a show about the Easter Island waste dump out in New Jersey, and that these cans were leaking into the water. And we flew over with a helicopter, Air Force helicopter, in the rain. It was ridiculously dangerous. However, we saw it, and then we went there, and I walked around, and I stepped in a puddle of this goop, and within a couple of days, I was walking on Sydney Place in the rain, and my foot was wet, and I took off my shoe, and it had melted because of the puddle.
Wow!
And I threw the shoe away. I was just like, oh my God. Nevertheless, I started working on a story from that moment on, which became my part of the Toxic Avenger, which was basically about a truck that breaks down on the BQE, and all of this stuff spills out right in Brooklyn Heights. And then somebody gets exposed to this, and then a whole bunch of people become like Toxic Avengers. But then I got introduced to John Avildsen. He was the president of our camera union, if you remember. Now, John directed Rocky. John directed Karate Kid. John was a really cool guy. He was a former cameraman. So I had optioned my first screenplay to George Romero right out of film school. And I was supposed to direct this movie when I was 21 called Jimmy, about a little kid and his whacked out fantasies. Nevertheless, that film didn't get made. But I took that script after the option ran out to John. John read it and he loved it. And he called Lloyd Kaufman. And he told Lloyd, hire Joe to write this new movie you're working on. They had already made 2 movies at least, and they never worked with a script before. So it was a very interesting experience to write their first script. And they would literally make movies up off the top of their head, and then maybe they had some notes, but literally that's how they were making movies. And you really Now, Lloyd is a character, and Michael Hers, his partner, these are two characters, okay? New York guys. Lloyd's bully in high school was Oliver Stone, as I mentioned to Seth yesterday. And Oliver would beat Lloyd up every day. And they would go over and play, and then he'd get up in a headlock, and you know how it is when you're fucking 14 years old. Pardon my French. Nevertheless, so Lloyd is an interesting man. However, Lloyd agreed to what John had to say and called me in. And because of John, Lloyd hired me. That's really what happened. Why? Because there was a kid out in the waiting room with a stack of scripts on his lap, and they said, look, sign the contract or that jerk writes the script. I was just like, are you kidding me? Give me that contract. And I right there, and it was the worst contract ever. Let me tell you, it was for $1. You know, it was so little. They pay them the same amount now. I'm just telling you. Nevertheless,
think about the value that it brought to your personal brand.
I had an idea.
You're a Brooklyn Heights legend now.
Well, Lloyd says to me in this meeting, first meeting, he goes, Joe, I got an idea for a movie. There's this kid. He works at a health club. And somehow, we don't know how, he becomes a giant monster. And he, I guess, helps clean up the town of pollution. And once he's the monster, he wears a tutu. Go. And that was their story. I was like, now, wait a minute. I'm working on this thing about nuclear waste, toxic waste. I've been working on it for a couple of years, literally. So maybe we can put them together. And he goes, maybe he falls into waste and then becomes the monster. And it's toxic. That adds the toxic thing to the whole idea.
Joe, let me ask you one question. How long have you been with the William Morris Agency?
That only lasted about 4 months. Sorry.
You gave him up.
I'll be right back.
Do you ever hear that joke, by the way?
What's that?
The director that got in trouble with the mob?
No.
Needed to vanish? He joined the William Morris Agency and was never heard from again.
Believe me. Well, let me tell you, this is the story of my career right there, baby. So hilariously, this became, Lloyd and I sat in a room for about a week and we just spit the ideas out. And then I took these ideas and I wrote the script in 2 weeks. And then they started shooting. And then I kept writing. So they said, well, keep going. I wrote for about 5 weeks. I did
If you are interested in seeing The Toxic Avenger, you can. Here it is.
Oh my God!
Here is the original movie poster. The Toxic Avenger. He was 98 pounds of solid nerd until he became the Toxic Avenger, the first hero from New Jersey. The first superhero from New Jersey. So now we got Joe Ritter, the creative genius and force, the organizing force behind the Toxic Avenger. Joe Ritter, who did a piece for where did you step in the puddle in New Jersey? But who it was 2020?
It was for 2020, and we were probably with Dave Marish, if you remember Dave Marish.
Remember Dave Marish? He's another guy that joined the William Morris Agency.
Yes. So anyway,
your former co-worker Geraldo Rivera did not join the William Morris Agency. No. Your former co-worker Geraldo Rivera joined, I guess, the satanic cult that led to Fox.
Yeah, look at that. Well, it's a crazy world we live in. What can you say? And the Toxic Avenger turns out to be this ridiculously prophetic thing. I mean, we were so far ahead of complaining about toxic waste. And here it is 40 years later, pretty much 38 years later. And we just experienced this incredible presidency that had a little bit to do with toxic stuff.
Yeah.
On every level, I guess. So maybe it was all that deregulation at the beginning of the presidency that released all this toxic waste that made people go crazy. Maybe that's what happened. And they were infected by toxic waste, and then they became like the bad guys in the Toxic Avenger. And now what we need to save ourselves The Toxic Avenger. And I guess that's why they're remaking it. So
It could be the emotionally toxic Avenger.
well, oh my God. I mean, what do you do? What do you do with brainwashed crazy people?
So, Joe, I was thinking about you should somehow integrate, because I love that scene. You're walking across 17th Street and your foot starts to itch. It's wet out. So you sit down, right, on a stoop, and you take your right shoe off, your sneaker off, and it's half gone. And you look at it, and that's the way the film starts. This is a Stephen King thing.
Well, that was there was something like that. Yeah, we had to.
And you know what you could call the film? Barefoot in the Park.
Barefoot in the Park 2.
How can we A, promote, or B, help? What are you working on now?
Well, this is fantastic that you asked this question. Well, let me tell you. So, due to the fact that this started about 10 years ago, Akiva Goldsman bought the rights originally. That went on for about 8 years or 9 years. And then Legendary bought the rights to remake The Toxic Avenger. And they just hired Peter Dinklage. Now, Peter Dinklage is one of my favorite actors, and he's a neighbor. He lives right nearby, and his dog, Kevin, and my dog, Hoshi, were friends.
You're kidding me.
God, walking down the street, yes. So, nevertheless, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with it. I have no idea. But because of all this, of course, I own a lot of my own property. I wrote many scripts that never got made. Most likely, part of the reason they didn't get made is they were all starring women leads. And I kept getting told, oh, this won't work. An action film with a woman won't work, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but Aliens did okay. And Terminator is not bad. And I mean, really, come on, fellas. But they weren't really that interested. Thank goodness these ideas survived the test of time. And maybe I was prophetic or maybe it was dumb luck, but I have people interested in stuff that I wrote 30 years ago.
Had you not gone to Brooklyn Friends School, do you think that your attitude about what you would have written in advocacy for women and advocacy for people who don't normally get a fair shake in Hollywood, do you think that would have been different?
Yeah. I was overwhelmed by women in my family. Me and my dad were outnumbered like 4-1. It was all these sisters and grandmothers, et cetera, et cetera. So nevertheless, they were very powerful people. But there was something in more than that. I was studying just psychology. I was working on Mary Pfeiffer, MD, Reviving Ophelia, if you're familiar with that, Saving the Selves of Teenage Girls.
Yep.
I was studying, I was a biology major in high school. I did 2 years of genetics, got the New York State Biology Scholarship to go to medical school, went to film school at NYU for free instead. Nevertheless, I did a year of bio on my own in high school. That's probably how I did third year alone with a book and no parental supervision. So basically, I never stopped studying human behavior, psychology, and whatnot. So while studying Mary Pfeiffer, sort of a new idea about girls' psychology, women's psychology, the idea that women are not represented in entertainment was very powerful. And I was writing a vampire series that Showtime almost picked up literally 20 years ago, right before all the vampire stuff exploded. I had a very big vampire franchise called Vampire Confidential. Nevertheless, it was all about women. So that's, right now I'm doing mostly women's project, and I gave 3 really talented young women, 25-year-old women from Germany and Brooklyn, their first opportunity to write, direct, and star in their own television show. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm making a TV show called My New Girlfriend, and it is online in mynewgirlfriend.tv. And you are invited to a virtual screening of my new television show, episode 1. And that's how we're doing it. So we are communicating with everybody in Hollywood. We're actually talking to Netflix in Germany and hopefully the BBC. It's an international television show. And right now we're shooting it like this. It's done on Zoom. And iPhone Videos, and it's a gay women's romance drama about gay women having relationships and breaking up their relationships.
So
Joe, can I
gonna-
say one thing, Seth? Can I say
Go
one
ahead,
thing? It seems to me, Joe, now that you've given us this wonderful picture of what your career track is like, that it really all came from that conjugal visit idea when you were 3.
And what more can I say? Obviously, that was one of the most important events of my life.
I know.
I'm still looking for my conjugal visit. I don't know about you guys.
I got to tell you. So what I'm going to do, Joe, is I'm going to show the webpage. This is welcome to the Brooklyn Pictures Entertainment New Year's virtual screening of My New Girlfriend. And as Joe mentioned before, if you want to write this down, kids, it's mynewgirlfriend.tv. And Joe, if you want to just repeat the theme of it again for the viewers so they can see. And then what we're going to do is we're all going to watch it and come back and pick this up at a later date.
Wonderful. It is it's a great idea. I managed to make it's theoretical. Can you make a drama without a crew and anything? So what do you have to work with? Well, it was probably March, and me and my business partner were getting ready to launch our entire company. We own a firm 19 properties. We own the copyrights of these fantastic screenplay stories and whatnot. We're getting ready to launch with this great woman, saleswoman, and COVID hit, and the whole thing just disappeared. I lost $20 million. I mean, it was outrageous. The beginning of the year was so exciting about finally making it in Hollywood, and COVID ruined the whole thing. And the person that we were working with, she got affected by COVID and she dropped out. And so anyway, we decided to take over and to get on the phone and call Hollywood and try and make all this happen. And while doing that, meaning we had made our other TV pilot called Hostile Takeover, which is a wonderful serial killer, predator thief story about a woman. And every time she gets a new job, it's another opportunity for her to steal huge amounts of money. It's all white collar crime. So nevertheless,
great idea.
While sitting around waiting to try and sell that, which we had all planned and then completely fell through, I went nuts and just said, we got to make something. I'm going crazy. We have to, we bought, we have 3 cameras. We got 20 lenses. We got a full lighting package. we have everything. We were ready to go and make films ourselves. And this COVID hit. So I said, what do we have? We have Zoom. We have iPhone videos. That's it. And what can you do with that? Well, we decided to do gay women's romance.
So that's a thoroughly innovative and modern take, but I think it's fascinating that the technological improvements to your media coincide with the thematic subjects that you picked. And I'm really interested in one of the things that we talk about, Jack and I, frequently, is how changes in technology are empowering and how they are limiting and where the interface of that is. So what you're basically saying is you are now able, or at least you're getting a taste or a vision of what it's like when the power of production is in the palm of your hand and you don't have to rely on all these other legacy expensive legacy things when really the narrative and the content is what's really truly important. It's not like you're in the Marvel universe, or frankly, the difference between the 2 properties that we're talking about here, Toxic Avenger, which will presumably be experiencing some pretty expensive post, right? And CGI stuff. Mm-hmm. And the difference between the mind that created that and the mind that created, it's the same mind, that is tapping into a new technology, or at least the ability to utilize emerging technologies that are all here in the phone and in the camera and everywhere else, and do content that's compelling, but do it really light. What are your thoughts on the next, on these types of films finding their way onto our consciousness in a COVID world when we're all having to camp out in front of Netflix?
Mhm. Well, it's obvious. I mean, necessity really is the mother of something. However, other people had told me that they had tried this and it didn't work. And so I called back upon, and I'm going to drop some names, but it's true. John Huston gave me a directorial internship when I was 18 years old. He made fun of me all day, but he had a wicked sense of humor, but he just went through it. He says, really, all bullshit aside, it's about this, and this. It's about story, character, and these performers who are going to be able to pull it off. If all of that works, it will work. And of course, you're the one who keeps the train on the tracks. The train starts falling off, you push it back on, meaning the story has to go, whether it's linear or not, it has to go from beginning, middle, and end, and it has to begin and it has to end. And the audience has to recognize that. So I convinced these young women to basically do that, you do what you ordinarily do. Are you on Zoom all the time? Yes. Are you on your phone doing FaceTime all the time? Are you constantly? How do we make a show about how you communicate with your friends ordinarily? And they answered it by, well, I said, let's just scene, just like it would be in a movie, only we don't have anything. And that means we have to do all the art direction first. We have to take me around your house. Let's take a look at all your spots. And we're going to, actually, with one of the actresses, we shot 50 takes in 5 different locations. We shot each scene in a different location. And we maximized it, really. Some just by aiming the camera at it, the phone at it, you can tell, oh, that's better, And each time the woman did it, her performance got better and better and better. So it was, it's kind of an obvious thing to use what you got. And that's really, with nothing else, this is all we had. So we wrote a great story. And that's the thing. I have 3 young women. My business partner, Simon Rubenstein, who just graduated from NYU in the last couple of years, really smart young man. And he built the whole thing with me starting 4 years ago. I found him basically out of NYU Film School, and I went to NYU Film School. So there was a connection there. And then I told him that, Toxic Avenger is going to be remade and that we got to package everything and try and sell it. Using the fact that the Toxic Avenger is this giant thing. There's my name on it on IMDb. We may as well see if we can do it. And we have to do it. It's not like see if we can do it. This is a lifetime achievement for me to be able to finally make movies. So really, I went to NYU. There was Lee Strasberg. There was Harold Clurman. There was Stella Adler. And there was Andre Gregory. Andre Gregory of My Dinner with Andre.
My Dinner with Andre.
And these were my professors. Harold Clurman he was my professor in class. Lee, I had to chase him down in the hallway because I didn't take any of his classes. But because of John Huston, he would talk to me. So they all told me the basic same thing, which is as long as the drama works and the performances are good enough, it'll work. And this is what Robert Altman worked with. This is what a lot of people were able to do, boiling their films down to performance instead of explosions and a lot of,
Joe, so tell me, when COVID hit the business, I'm retired, so I'm not privy to what's going on. And people realized they couldn't shoot, or they certainly couldn't shoot the scripts that they had in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Did they all turn to development and script writing and ideas and if they did, that must mean that when this thing lightens up a bit Now they're finding cracks and ways of doing it. My son works as a sound man in Sweden, in Stockholm, on TV series now. And, they're all wearing masks, but
Sure.
he had COVID. The rest of the crew got COVID, all that shit. So now, slowly, this is going to explode with all these projects that people haven't been able to do. What is that going to look like?
Well,
Does that mean everybody's working?
Maybe. And actually, the thing that, it's just like you take water and you shoot it through a funnel and it comes out faster. So I see it as this physics thing as far as the audience will adapt, right? That's my show is kind of proof that the audience will sit there and listen to women for 40 minutes, talk about their relationships, and they're walking around. I made sure that their phone is, there's motion, so that it isn't like this, you're just like sitting there. I just think that there will probably be another X amount of venues, that venues will increase because movie theaters will decrease. The obvious shift is forced by a pandemic, the shift from theater to home viewing, which is changing daily no matter what.
Yep.
But that was shocked into existence by the COVID.
Yep.
So I don't know. Business is opportunistic. So if I was a business person and I had venue, if I had access to infrastructure and an audience, I'd show them whatever I could. So I have a feeling that others, that I'm not alone, that everybody who's in business, whether it is a giant or a medium or a small, will try and clone themselves and make themselves into more. Why? Because the audience is huge.
I think this is a really compelling conversation because it reminds me of like the class that I took in Soviet political systems as the wall was falling down and the Soviet Union was falling apart. It's like we're looking at a film industry in the middle of a tremendous paradigm shift in communications globally. And, you're right on the cutting edge as a guest. I'm really grateful that we were able to share, what the creative process looks like, what the thought process looks like, what somebody who has, anybody who watches this interview is going to come away thinking, here is a guy who's living in Dharma, who has a tremendous capacity for vision and is perfectly representative of the creative people that create the entertainment that we see on our screens. So regardless, Joe, I want to thank you for that. And I think what we should do is readdress this as a segment on an ongoing basis periodically, because I think it really demands further analysis from the 50,000 foot perspective. And then as we drill down and you get further into these projects, regardless of how they're met critically or regardless of whether they take off, whatever, it's fascinating to me. So I want to thank you for that. Jack, do you have any other questions / observations for Joe, who was generously giving us like 45 minutes of his life?
Well, I think that I'm a real fan, Joe, and this is why I do what I do. I build guitars and motorcycles and cars.
Really nice ones too.
And the thing, I am a fan, not of the result, but of the process. Because I think after all these years, I've realized that the Chinese call it beginner's smile. It's that smile you had when the first time you were on a set, and God, you wanted to be the cameraman or you wanted to be the director. And then when 20, 30 years later, you became that person, you didn't have that smile anymore. and so I am a true fan of every stage of the process rather than the result. It's very satisfying to see a feature that you shot and you think it looks good, but it's nothing compared to the experience of shooting it.
It's an incredible point, especially right now, because I'm right in the middle of trying to sell some of this stuff, which is so different. However, me and these fabulous women get on Skype. We don't have to look at each other. and we put screen share so that you can see either the script or I just talk and we talk and they take notes in Germany and in Brooklyn where they both are. And there we are in real time. We do it on Saturdays at 2:00 so that it's 8:00 in Germany. My German director is so talented. And really, once I get them started, I do my best to just shut up and let them have their opportunity. Why? This is, it would be delighted if I'd be delighted if I get my chance to finally direct and do what I always wanted to do. And we can segue very briefly that I was your brother's assistant and we had the best time. Oh my God. And because I worked with your brother, I worked in Hollywood. Because I mentioned his name, I worked with every Steadicam operator, and I worked on Dracula and Barton Fink and Godzilla and Starship Troopers and so many great movies. However, I really just love making movies, but I recognize that women need an opportunity. I think that's my key thing, is that I've given 3 25-year-old women from international backgrounds who didn't know each other. They got introduced. They love each other. They're working together. I make them go work together by themselves. They bring it back. I have a lot of experience, so I can help with the story and the character, but mostly I do my best to stay out of it and let them do their work. And you can go watch it, and it's great. And we're making episode 2 right now, and we've basically built like a 3-episode arc of romance and breakup. For where the relationship finally by episode 3 starts to collapse. And then you make it through that. And hopefully all of us have had this experience. That's what's so great. It's a common experience of falling in love. And then you have your big argument. Do you keep going or do you give up? And in my story, they don't give up.
Okay. So, they once described Lawrence of Arabia as his function in his life was to be a pipe.
Yeah, a conduit.
A conduit that experiences flowed through. And that's where he got his satisfaction. And it sounds to me as if you're doing very much the same thing. It's one of the reasons I love teaching. Teaching film is so much more fun than making film.
That work of yours is great.
Yeah, and it's a conduit. It's watching life flow through this thing. That really gives you the ultimate satisfaction because you're creating something that's bigger than the product, basically.
And teaching these young women that their phones, this is how they're going to become their stars. My young woman, Denise Lerner in Germany, she makes her own videos on YouTube. They're hilarious. She makes her own characters. She played a guy named Antonio from Brooklyn the other day. It was a riot. But it was Francis Coppola in the documentary about what was it? The Heart of Darkness. Was that what Hearts of
Darkness? Yeah.
Which was directed by George Hickenlooper, who was my craft service guy on my Roger Corman film Beach Balls.
Wow.
Nevertheless, he became a director and then passed away very sadly. However, Francis, at the end of the movie, he says, because of this little video that they've invented now, the next Mozart of cinema is going to be an overweight 14-year-old girl from Ohio.
I love it.
Stuck in my head.
I love it.
Really is what. And then I worked with Francis on Dracula, and he really impressed me. Oh my God. But that really idea is that I can create opportunities for other people while doing the same thing for myself, and we could work together and make it happen.
And that is the most empowering thing.
Yeah, that's like film school, but we actually make a movie.
Right.
And really, I've been sending them to acting school. Like I said, I made this one actress do 50 takes, and she did it. And they got better and better.
It's karmically impossible for you not to get what you want with this attitude of professional and artistic generosity that you're displaying.
Yeah. And that's what we're marketing that. We have a new marketing guy. We start this afternoon, and we are actually, I do the casting. We're doing the marketing. We're actually looking into our agent's license. so that we can contact anyone and submit our own work?
All right, everybody. The property is called My New Girlfriend. You can see it on mynewgirlfriend.tv. This has been the phenomenally creative Joe Ritter, friend of the show. Thank you, Joe, for joining us today. Joe, thanks so much. We're going to have to do this again soon.
You guys rock. Thank you so
Thanks, buddy. Great to see you again, man.
much. Wonderful to see you, Jack.
Thanks so much for helping out with the show. We really appreciate it.
You guys rock and have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
you.
buddy. You too.
Okay.
That was Joe Ritter, director and the creative force behind Toxic Avenger and My New Girlfriend at mynewgirlfriend.tv. Jack, I think that was an outstanding segment. What do you think? Say yes.
No, his energy, his enthusiasm.
We're on the air, by the way, buddy.
I know, his love of life. This is the kind of person we need in our lives.
Perpetually.
And the fact that he has gravitated,
we go on the air perpetually.
he has gravitated to film, which is a collective endeavor where that talent and that energy and that idea of all these people swimming down the stream together creatively. And that's who he is. And so he has found the perfect métier for someone who has those qualities. It's not a solo thing. He's not sitting in his office writing a book.
No.
He's collectively, he gets a satisfaction from grabbing as many people as possible and saying, let's go.
Yeah,
And
he's
that's perfect.
clearly a visionary, clearly driven by a worldview and a series of behaviors that have been. I mean, I have a feeling that the Joe of 1984 is the same Joe of 2021, and what you see is what you get. And we have a tremendously creative, endlessly creative engine, like a gyroscope, like some sort of internal gyroscope that will not fucking stop under any circumstances and keeps creating cool shit, you know? And notice that his thinking is not limited to what's happening in a static environment. He's rethinking ways of doing production that not only fit in his within his artistic capabilities, but also within the technological capabilities and the restrictions of our time. I think this is a tremendously exciting avenue to keep exploring, because I think that we're going to have it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who's involved in a paradigm shift as it's happening within a specific industry. And to me, it was like a very hopeful experience.
Well, he's a very positive individual who has found his niche, and it satisfies him. But I love the fact of this encouraging the collective. I just, that's his value as a human being. When all films have been seen, critiqued, and given a rating, what is left but the feeling that you had going down this pipe?
Yeah. So remember, everybody, Joe Ritter, as I wipe my nose, so emotional after that Joe Ritter interview. Joe Ritter, the creator of My New Girlfriend at mynewgirlfriend.tv, and the creative force behind the Toxic Avenger, which apparently is coming out with Peter Dinklage. And we learned today that Joe is like a major league macha in the name dropping world and has worked with some pretty cool people. I think we have to have him on again.
Seth, the film is not coming out. Keep in mind, if you ink somebody that likes a part, you're 5 years, 10 years away from the product. Okay.
Regardless of that, at least it's in conversation.
I understand. I didn't want people to start looking for it on Netflix. Okay.
Why not? They're going to forget about it day after tomorrow. Nobody gives a shit what we say.
You're right. Okay, Seth, with that truism,
We're going to wrap it up, my friend. Thank you so much, Jack Churchill. We will have a conversation and communicate with the rest of you on when we are next on. It is possible we'll be doing a once-a-week thing on Friday nights. We have to talk about it. The demands on our time are changing, and we have to respond accordingly. So keep an eye out on the Seth and Jack page. At any rate, we'll be back on Friday, whether it's at noon or in the evening. We will let you know.
Cool.
For Jack
Take care,
Churchill,
Seth. Bye.
I'm Seth, signing off.